Can you guys tell that it's actually 7:30 p.m.? Because I really can't. So I'm borrowing my best friend's softbox lights. And then I also have my ring light going. So, which I think I'm gonna bump up the ring light just a little bit because it's starting to get just a little bit darker. Because I'm still in my usual setting. So I'm in front of my window and it's 7:30, so the sun's going down. It's gonna get a little bit darker. And we're just testing some things out today. And we're gonna be doing a different kind of video today too. So today, we're gonna be doing a bit more of a commentary kind of video. I've been thinking about dabbling into doing more commentary related content here on this channel because I do want to branch out into doing more of that kind of content over on my music channel, which if you want to check out my music channel, link is always down in the description box below. But the music related commentary that I do is quite simple in comparison to some of the commentary that I can do within the beauty space, because I feel as if there is a lot of drama and chaos and just interesting news to cover in regards to the beauty space. Whereas I feel as if like when it comes to like doing commentary stuff in regards to what's happening in the music world, it's not as spicy, it's not as fun, it's not as interesting, it's not as chaotic. But at the same time, it seems a little bit more real within the music space too. Yeah, it's an interesting dynamic. But I thought I would just sit here, put some makeup on, play with some products, and just chat with you guys about some brands that we really don't hear much of about anymore. Now, these brands are still active. They're still around. Some of them, I'm shocked, are still around, but they're still here. And we're just going to be talking about these brands that used to have everybody in a chokehold, but are now like, I guess you could say that they're just here. Some of these brands I do have a bit of a connection with, and then other brands I'm just like, I don't have anything really for or against them. So, and then there is one brand on here that I don't support, and we'll talk about that once we get there. But yeah, we're just gonna be talking about these brands that used to have everybody in a chokehold, myself included, and just talk about why I think they kind of fizzled out. So if you guys want to stick around for this video, please definitely do so. I would really appreciate if you do. I'm trying to grow this channel. We're trying out new things today, and we're testing out a slightly different setup as well. But without further ado, let's go ahead and hop on into this. But before we do so, if you guys are new here to my channel, don't forget to hit subscribe, and also while you're down there, definitely give this video a thumbs up because it'll help me out a lot. All my links are down in the description box below, which are the links to my Twitter, Instagram, and my music channel like I mentioned earlier. Definitely check me out on all those places if you're interested, and let's go ahead and get started. Alrighty, so the first brand that we're going to touch on is actually ABH. So Anastasia Beverly Hills is a bit of a juggernaut of a brand. Just about anybody and everybody knows this brand if you keep up with the beauty space in any capacity. Oh my god, I forgot how liquidy this stuff was. Oh my god. Oh god, it's been a long time since I've used this primer. Not this particular tube, but just in general. I feel like ABH was like one of the first few brands that I wound up getting interested in when I started getting into makeup years upon years ago. And I feel like they had like their like big break once like influencer marketing really started taking off back in like 2016 and especially in 2017. Pretty sure in 2017 is when Modern Renaissance came out. And Modern Renaissance, when that palette came out, it took the beauty world by storm. Like, so many people were friggin' raving about that palette. I mean, even I had it. I had it for a while. I did declutter it just simply because I just wasn't reaching for it enough. And I have colors and other palettes from formulas that I like just a bit more, or that I just like those palettes in general just a little bit more than that one. And yeah, I wanted to keep those palettes instead of that one. And so when I purged through my makeup collection last year, Modern Renaissance was one of the palettes to go. And I feel like within recent years, especially like after the pandemic Lovato, I feel like ABH is a brand that kinda has lost its edge. They definitely lost their thunder. Like they very much like had their time to shine and whatnot. I don't know why I put down this shadow. It's just a beige. Why did I do that? I feel like with ABH, like especially after the pandemic Lovato and when they tried launching the Norvina sub brand within the ABH brand, I think that's when the brand really started to lose its edge, because I think it was like 2019 was when the brand, for whatever reason, decided that they were just going to start launching a bunch of products like back to back to back, and having like so many launches like back to back to back. And a lot of people were in like at first like, okay, this is fun, yay, but then like people just started getting really weirded out by it, especially because they were doing influencer collabs during this period of time too. There were, I think, like 4 collabs that kind of like came out back to back to back, and those were the Amrezy palette, the Alyssa Edwards palette, the Carly Bydel palette, and the Jackie Aina palette. From what I heard, like all of the collab palettes were good. I've only have ever had the Jackie Aina palette. I still have it in my collection. It's one of my favorite palettes, so I'm never gonna part with it. Even though I learned, oh, I say I learned, I got reacquainted with some information about Anastasia today, and I'm just like, don't want to keep using this brand and whatnot. I don't know. This primer is really nice though. I'm remembering that this guy was pretty good. But you know what else is pretty good? The primer potion from Urban Decay. So yeah. But anyways, getting back on course. During 2019, like I mentioned, they did like all those influencer collabs, and then they had like their regular launches as well as a brand. And I feel like because of all of these launches that they were putting out back to back to back to back to back, it was making a lot of us have makeup fatigue, because it's just like you're putting out so much so quickly. We're not having enough time to enjoy the release that he just put out. And I remember Norvina, I believe, made a statement in regards to this, because a lot of people were pointing out like, hey, you're putting out a lot of products, and especially with doing these influencer collabs, nobody is really getting their time to shine, and you're just putting product out left and right and whatnot. Like, you guys aren't ColourPop. Why are you launching so much and everything? And their response was that with how oversaturated the industry is now, they felt as if they needed to keep putting out new products left and right to try to keep up with everybody. I don't know about you guys, but I never once got the impression that ABH was a struggling brand. I never once got that vibe or got that feeling that like they were struggling to keep up or anything like that. I was always under the impression that like, hey, this brand is doing really good and everything, and they don't need to really worry about much of anything. And so like during 2019, there weren't brands that were like well known within the space that were going out of business at that point in time. Like everybody was still out and about doing their own thing. Like the pandemic Lovato hadn't hit yet, and so it's just like everybody is just having a good time and just vibing and doing what they want to do. And so for them to come out and just say like, we don't want to get left behind, like it started making me think like, well shoot, are they possibly struggling and everything, or are they just simply not wanting to like fall to the wayside and everything? Because there are already some brands at that point in time, and a lot of us were noticing it. We're just like struggling to keep up with everybody. I feel as if this palette is doing kind of something like the Millennial Pinks palette, where all the pinks just kind of blend into each other to create one shade. But the thing is though, is that I would rather pay $4 for a small little palette like this to have something like this turn out than to pay like, what is it marked down to now, 20 bucks for that palette. It would start making me think like, okay, like what's going on over here? And then like the Norvina sub brand was trying to become a thing, and a lot of people were either just like totally here for it or not here for it at all. I used to have the mini palettes from them, and I did like them. I thought that the formula was all right. Wasn't really anything exciting, but the color stories were really interesting. Even within like the bigger palettes, the color stories were something that caught my attention, especially because of how colorful they were. And I remember when, I think it was the Norvina Volume 4 palette came out, I remember a lot of people were saying, and I think Norvina might have mentioned this as well, but that was supposed to be like what the ABH Norvina palette was supposed to be like, because it had like these more like purpley tones and more smoky kind of looks that you do with it, but it's a lot brighter, way more saturated, because the Norvina palette was very smoky, but still very cool tones, still very like purpley and grungy, but it wasn't to the degree that this Norvina Volume 4 palette was. ABH, they also had some like pretty wild moments during their career. Like I remember, I think it was in 2017, maybe 2018, they had like this massive PR surge where they were going to be hitting up like a bunch of like random influencers to add on to their PR lists and everything, and people were losing their minds over this. I mean, even me, like, I knew that I didn't have any chance of being able to get onto their PR list, because I mean, at the time I was broke. I'm pretty sure I was unemployed at the time, and I knew that I wouldn't be able to get on their PR list, even though they were like, oh, it doesn't matter what size following you had. I had nobody following me at the time. I know I ain't gonna get anywhere with trying to get on this PR list, so I never did give it a chance and whatnot. And now, looking back at it, I'm glad I never did. A lot of people have come out that like they were on the PR list but for maybe a year, where they only got but one package, and that was it. You gotta give credit where credit is due. They also were one of the brands that really helped to set certain trends within the beauty industry and within the makeup world, so you have to give them credit, like I mentioned, where credit is due, because I mean, not a whole lot of brands were setting standards for like what's trending, what's hot, what's cool, and everything. Like, not a whole lot of people were doing that back in those days. And so for this brand to come out and do all those things is wonderful to see, and it's exciting, and it puts them on a very high pedestal and puts them pretty high up on the food chain in terms of brands that exist. And even now, I still feel as if that there are people out there that if you were to ask them like whom are some like big brands that you know of, a lot of them are going to say ABH, because of the impact that the brand has had within the industry. But you also have to think about something else, and that is that the brand just doesn't bring people in like it used to. Part of that can be because of controversies. Other things can be because of like the fact that they took a lot of people off of their PR lists after that PR package search thingy that they did. And again, just scandals too, and everything, like drama and everything. Because I remember when word got out that Norvina was treating a black influencer not very well, and when that broke out, that probably did some damage to the brand and to like the brand's reputation. And then also, I think this was quite recent, and something that got reminded to me today, everything, and that was that Anastasia herself is allegedly although we're all pretty certain it's true that she is a Putin sympathizer. And if you are familiar with me, you know that I love Ukraine. I am a massive fan of Ukrainian artists and musicians and whatnot. When that information came out and that, like, she is allegedly, like, pro-war with Ukraine, like, that doesn't sit well with a lot of people, myself included. And so it's just like, people speak with their money and how they use it. And so if people aren't happy with how a brand is operating, they will make it known by not putting their money in with that brand. So another brand that I have on my list, and this is a brand that does make me feel a little bit sad to have on this list, but that is going to be Urban Decay. Urban Decay has been a brand that I have kept up with for years. They were the first prestige brand that I ever bought something from years upon years ago when I first started getting into makeup and good products, I should say, because I remember the first palette that I got from them, I bought it from Ulta. It was right after I had turned 19, so about 9 years ago now, and it was the Smoked palette. And the Smoked palette came with a baby version of the primer potion and a full size of their Perversion pencil liner. And Urban Decay, back in those days, they had us all in a chokehold. Like, who remembers the craze that was the Vice palettes? Not the Naked palettes. Like, we all know about the Naked palettes and how those had all of us in a chokehold. Like, I remember when Naked 2 came out, people were excited about it, but I remember people lost their minds when Naked 3 came out. But remember the insanity that was the Vice palettes. Like, the Vice palettes were like these limited edition palettes that they would put out around holiday, and the color stories in them, looking back on it now, weren't really that exciting and everything, or at least to like present day me, they are not that exciting. But back in those days, nobody was really putting out palettes like those. So to see a brand do something that was so far off like the typical course of things within the beauty space and everything, it was wild to see. It was exciting to see. And they were so innovative. They had like such a grungy and alternative aesthetic behind them. Like, they were the brand that, like, if you were alternative, they were one of the first few brands that would come to mind that you could go after and seek out to have something that you would be interested in having in your collection. I mean, and I know technically like KVD was around back in these days too, but we're not going to talk about them today. We're going to save talking about KVD for another day because they could be on this list, but I want to save them for a separate video because there's so much going involved with that. Like, I want to do a video dedicated to problematic brands and brands with chaotic histories. I don't really think Urban Decay really got into any trouble or anything like that. I don't think they were ever in like any sort of controversies or anything like that, and they never really did anything crazy. Well, the Squirt All-Nighter April Fool's joke, that was a move that they did this year that I will never forget. But I don't think that they ever made like really any poor decisions. I mean, I know a lot of people lost their minds when Estee Lauder acquired them years ago, but I mean, they're still cruelty free. But then again, like, a lot of people lost their minds when Estee Lauder acquired them because those are people who pay attention to parent companies, and if a parent company isn't cruelty free, then they don't support them. I will still support a brand if their parent company is not cruelty free. That's just my prerogative though. If it's not yours, then so be it. I feel as if like Urban Decay just started like trying to ride the wave of the naked palettes. Like they saw that those palettes were very popular, so they just started launching a bunch of random palettes and just throwing naked on them. Like the original naked palettes were called the naked palettes because they were all like nudie, natural, neutral palettes. And then they started putting out these random palettes that weren't neutral, that weren't like nudie tones, and throwing the naked label on them. Like there were some of them that made sense to like put them into the family and everything, like say like Naked Honey. Like Naked Honey, I felt as if was the last naked palette that, for one, from what I heard people talk about, not only like online but also within like my own friend group and everything, Naked Honey was like the last Urban Decay palette that was actually really good in terms of like naked palettes, at least. How did the other naked palettes besides like Naked Honey and possibly Naked Heat fit into that category of being something that could be considered a naked palette? Because they weren't like natural tones or neutrals and like nudie tones. They were just like random ass color stories. Like you had like the Naked Cyber palette that they put out for holiday of 2021, and Naked Wild West, Naked Heat. Like I said, that one could go either which way on how you look at Naked Cherry, the Naked Smoky. Like they were just throwing the naked name on top of these random ass palettes that really didn't need to have it there. They could have been their own little palettes, but they threw the naked name on top of it to try to ride the wave of the naked palettes. And I understand that there are times when you have to make certain decisions to try to make sure that a product is successful, but you also have to keep in mind that it's just like when a wave is gone, it is gone. Like there are so many brands that try to ride the waves. I mean, like look at Becca. They tried to ride the wave of Champagne Pop and look where it got them. Gone. I know Urban Decay, they've had some like products that have done really well recently and everything, but the thing is that yeah, a brand can have their hero products. Like I think like from Urban Decay, you're gonna have like certain naked palettes, the primer potion, and the all-nighter setting spray. Those I feel are like their hero products, and maybe even Perversion, the pencil liner. But besides those things, they really don't have any like staple products that people are raving about. I know the Moon Dust Shadow and Space Cowboy blew up and everything, but I don't really get the hype behind that guy though. Like I work in the industry, I've worked in beauty retail for going on 2 years now. I've been around that guy for a long time. I don't get the hype behind it. I don't know if that's just the boomer in me. I say that I'm a boomer and I just turned 28. I'm like a millennial. Or Gen Z, I don't fucking know. They've put out good products and everything. I mean, like their tinted moisturizer is really good, and then the new concealer that they put out is really good. Although I did return mine and everything because I just wasn't using it enough. And with the amount of coverage that I prefer to go for with my foundation, it just had way too much coverage for it, and it was hard to hide the fact that my concealer had way more coverage than my foundation. I still really like that concealer though, and I still sell it to people on a regular basis. But at the same time though, it's just like they haven't put out really much of anything that is really exciting. They haven't been able to capture the hype and the craze that were the original Naked palettes and the Vice palettes from back in the day. And like I said, it makes me worry for them. The next brand that I have on my list is LORAC. Now, LORAC kind of falls into that same category as Urban Decay, where they had certain products that people were losing their minds over, but that was really all that you would ever hear people talk about. I feel like when it comes to LORAC, the products that people know of and rave about from them were their Pro palettes. I know I wanted the Pro 2 palette, but the main reason why I wanted it was because of that navy shadow. Because at the time, brands weren't really putting out colors like that in palettes and everything. They weren't putting out like a really intense and noticeable navy, but it was in that one, and I really wanted it. But guess who was too broke to ever get it? Me. Now that I have the money to potentially get it, I don't even think they even have that palette anymore. And I don't even know where you can even get LORAC at this point. Maybe Kohl's? And even then, I don't even think so now that Sephora is in Kohl's. Because I know before Sephora went into the Kohl's that was in my hometown, I could find LORAC in there. And then I know that they were in Ulta for a period of time, but then they left Ulta. So, God, I want to take the mascara off of this one lash out over here. I don't know if you guys can see it, but it's just like going just straight out. Why? Why, my dude? Why are you like this? Like, it's literally just going straight out. Like, can you guys see that? It's just sticking straight out over there. But even still, I feel as if even back in those days, the only products that I ever heard people talk about from LORAC were those pro palettes. Other than that, I never heard people really talk about them at all. And it's not to say like they just weren't a successful brand back in those days. People were losing their minds over them, like I mentioned before. But they only ever talked about the pro palettes, like the regular pro palettes and then the mega pro palettes. Oh my God, I remember when the first mega pro palette came out, people were losing their minds over that because the only times I ever saw like those really big eyeshadow palettes that had like, how many shadows were in the regular pro palettes? Was it like 20, I think? I think it was like 20 or 24 shadows were in each palette. And then the Mega Pro was double the amount. So you're getting about like 40 shadows in a freaking palette. And the only times I ever saw like really big eyeshadow palettes like that were from like cheap brands. Like say like back in those days, like e.l.f., Coastal Scent. Like, people just stopped really talking about LORAC very quickly, and it definitely showed. I don't even hear people talking about them now, and I don't even know if they're even still around. They might have already gone out of business and I just never heard about it. So who knows? And the fact that like when I learned this bit of information about the brand, I kind of lost a little bit of respect for them. But the name LORAC is just the owner's name spelled backwards. Carol. Yeah. You're welcome for allowing me to ruin your night. Next brand that we're going to touch on is the Balm. Again, one of these brands that had everybody in a chokehold for a period of time. And it was all because of the Luminizer sisters. So the Luminizer sisters were their line of highlighters. So you had Cindy Luminizer, Mary Luminizer, which that was their bestseller, and then it was Cindy, Mary, and who was the other? I can't remember the third one. There was a third one though, but I can't think of it off the top of my hair. Off my head. Oh my God. And then like their eyeshadow palettes as well were really popular too, like the Meet Matte Hue palettes and the what were they called? Like the Nude Beach palettes or something like that. Like the nude palettes, like where they had like people like drawings of like vintage people. And like the shadow pans like covered up on like their body parts and everything to make it seem as if they were naked and whatnot. They were onto something. Like if you're unfamiliar with the Balm, I wouldn't be surprised because I mean people haven't been talking about them in a very, very long time. I remember Nikki Tutorials like was someone who really popularized Mary Luminizer. She was using the life out of that highlighter and then just stopped talking about them. And there were other products from them that a lot of people raved about, like the Bahama Mama bronzer, some of their blushes even. But I mean, other than that though, the brand just wasn't doing much. And once like a lot of these brands really started coming out of the woodwork and the industry started becoming more and more saturated, the Balm kind of just fizzled out. They just kind of like went to the wayside and people just really stopped talking about them. But their whole aesthetic though for the Balm was that it was supposed to be like very vintage, very like retro kind of vibe that they were going for. It was a really fun aesthetic and they had really fun packaging, but a fun aesthetic, a fun vibe, and fun branding can make you last and everything. It's not going to be something that's going to guarantee your brand longevity. When it comes to brands that are having constant identity crises, we're going to touch on our last brand, and that is Too Faced. And I'm going to try to do this while putting on lipstick. So Too Faced, I'll probably talk about them a bit more in depth when I do. Hold on, let me put this on first. But yeah, but this is the final look though. Really soft, very natural, very pretty. Really like it. But also a quick question. In what world is this a Dusty Mauve lipstick? I have questions, Ulta brand. But with Too Faced, I feel as if like they're another one of these brands that had everybody in a chokehold during points in their career. And I feel as if like they come and go in terms of like they have like a product that is just like, yes, I need it. And then it's just like crickets for a very, very long time afterwards. Like, I know right now, like, the concealer is really popular, which I don't even get why it's so popular. It's just a concealer. The things that TikTok decides is, like, viral worthy and worthy of being a product to sell out makes no sense to me. Being someone who works in the industry and everything and is around these products on a regular basis, they're just all right. That's just me speaking, though. I don't know. I might be jaded because I work in this industry. With Too Faced, they are going to be a brand that I'll talk a little bit more in depth when I talk about brands that have behaved very, very badly. Because they have behaved very, very badly. I feel like with Too Faced, when, again, like back in the day when like ABH, Decay, LORAC, the Balm, when all of those brands were really blowing up and just on everybody's minds and everything, so were they. Like, they were one of those really big brands that everybody was talking about. Like, they had like fun packaging, they had fun concepts and fun themes and everything, but they also wound up having like this weird identity crisis moment where it's just like cutesy fun little things, better than sex mascara, cutesy fun ideas and things, lady balls lipstick. What is happening? And again, they're still going through this stint of like cutesy fun things, foreplay mascara primer. If you're gonna be cutesy, just stick with cutesy. If you're gonna like have like moments of being like, ooh, we're cute, but make it sexy, then be cute but make it sexy. Don't just throw in like these random moments where it's just like, oh, we're being sexy now. It doesn't make any sense. And ignore the people running around outside. I live in an apartment complex. Just deal with it. Why are you even outside playing right now? It's almost 8:30. Go home. Or at least play around a different unit. The next thing that I'm going to work on getting is an external mic, but I am too broke to get one. So we'll figure out what we'll do about recording audio at a later date because I am so annoyed with dealing with these fucking neighbors. The consistency and quality amongst their products is always up and down. Like, you never know if a product is going to be good quality or if it's going to be shitty quality, because they have some items where, especially when it comes to their holiday releases, they have some items that they just pump out and just put out there and just throw it out into the ether and it's shit quality. But then they have like other items where it's just like, this is really good, this is a really good item, like it's worth the money that you're paying for, and then they just put out this random shit during the holiday. But then they also have regular launches that have that shitty ass formula in it as well, and it's just like it's hard to figure out if you're actually going to be getting something that's actually worth the price tag, or if it's actually something that's going to be absolute dog shit. I think I've talked about this before, but I pretty much gave up on the brand after the Rich Lives Matter moment happened. For those of you who don't know, Jared, he used to be the owner of Too Faced. I think he still technically is the owner of Too Faced and everything. I'm not entirely sure. I know Too Faced got acquired by Estee Lauder, I believe, and he actually just launched like his own parent company and everything, and has like a bunch of brands under it, and one of them, which is a brand that creates jewelry cleaner, and it's like $75. I don't get it either. But anyways, but he's done a lot of problematic things, and just things that I am not like here for and everything, like the Rich Lives Matter cake for his birthday one year, the fact that he was age shaming Tati Westbrook back in the day for being like someone like back then, like she was in like her like early mid 30s I think, and was age shaming her for being an influencer at her age, and yet like he's like a living Ken doll. He's more plastic than like Joan Rivers ever was, and he's age shaming somebody in the beauty industry when you're clearly trying to make yourself look younger and doing it very, very poorly because you are what? White, and you do what? Age like milk. Luckily for me, I am proving to not be one of those people because I am 28 and still look as if I am 21. Yeah. That's what you get for not being problematic. Whole Nikki Tutorials collab drama as well, like that never sat well with me either. It's just, there are just so many things that have played into me just being like, no to them. And I'll go more in depth with talking about those things when I do the video on brands that have behaved badly in the future, if you guys want to see it. Nobody really talks about them anymore as well. Like they used to have people in a chokehold, but I think like people started seeing through the facade of things, and the fact that like their formulas are so inconsistent that it kind of made people fall off the bandwagon a bit. But not only that, but it also, all the controversies possibly played a role in it too. People allow their wallets to speak for them. Like if they are wanting to support a brand, they're going to do so. If they're not, they are not gonna put their money towards them. But that is it for this video for you guys today. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Are there brands that I should have talked about that I didn't talk about in this video? There probably are. Like I mentioned, I probably could have talked about like KVD, but I want to save them for like the brands that behave badly video. I know that there are some other brands, like drugstore brands, I probably could have talked about and everything, but at the same time, it's just like drugstore brands, it's really hard for them to go out of business and to like fall out of the zeitgeist. But when like these bigger brands do, that's a crazy thing. I'll probably even talk about some brands that have like closed their doors at some point, or brands that were on the verge of closing their doors, and just talk about like those kinds of things. So yeah, I probably even could have talked about Morphe in this video, but again, I feel like Morphe would need to be something to have its own separate video, because that is just a massive can of worms that would need a massive discussion to fully speak on and deal with. If you want to see more of these commentary kind of videos, let me know. Do you want them to be like this chit chat get ready with me kind of style, or do you want them to just be regular sit down kind of videos? Let me know, and I'll definitely be sure to do some more in the future. I really like talking about these kinds of things. I never really dabbled in with them before, just simply because the times when I did so in the past, I would always get I would always get shat on for it and everything. But at this point in time, I feel like a lot more people are getting into doing more commentary related content and just talking about things in general and just really discussing their feelings on things, and I like that. But let me know how you guys feel about it, and let me know if you want to see more of these kinds of videos, because I would be more than willing to do some more. But that's it for this video. Until I see you guys in my next one, whenever that might be. Goodbye.